University. I didn't put my email or anything on the sheet that you have there, so I'm going to give it to you right now. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me, send me a message. It's just my name, Serena Rowe, with no spaces.
Serena Rowe.
Top. So SERENAROWE at gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Okay. And if you have any questions afterwards, don't hesitate. I can answer them here or whatever. The first etude that I would like to start with is the Largo, number 7. A few general observations that you can take from this is that it is in the key of E minor. So if you practice your E minor scale in all the forms, so harmonic and melodic, that will be very beneficial to doing this etude. Also, if you did the arpeggios, not just the E, G, B, but start on C. Do all the arpeggios for this. And then there's also in this a very distinct C sharp diminished 7 arpeggio. And the notes are C sharp, E, G, A sharp. And it's in measure 11, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that's also an arpeggio that you should put into your warm-up whenever you do your warm-up. So this one starts in measure 9, excuse me. It doesn't start at the beginning for this etude, so we're actually starting in measure 9. Right there. So let's go through this really quickly. I'm just going to go through the handout basically with you. In measure 9, we want to make sure that we crescendo. We're going all the way to the D sharp of measure 10. In measure 10, be very meticulous of that rhythm. That double dotted needs to be held for the exact length. So make sure that you place the 16th note. Now, the interval between the F sharp and high B. If you have noticed, sometimes your high B is going to be flat, and your F sharp is going to be sharp. So we need to make sure that that interval between those two notes is big enough. Sometimes this might happen, right? And our B is flat. So make sure that you really raise your tongue and say ki, he, ti to get that high B. Right? And that there's enough air going to it. Okay, now measure 11, we start with here is your C sharp diminished 7 arpeggio. So my suggestion for this is that you practice it using it in your warm-up. So practice just playing that forwards, backwards, and different rhythms and everything. Make sure that on that high C sharp that you get off of the tie, that it doesn't last too long, that you're counting. Right? Okay, in measure 12, use the breath mark to put a little lift in between that low D, and it also gives you time to take a quick little breath. It'll give a little bit of space and help with the rhythm of the syncopation. And it gives it a little bit more of that feel, that syncopation. Okay, now measure 13. Might look a little scary, going from low E to 2-octave high E, right? What I suggest that you do is that you practice this interval by filling it in. So fill it in with the arpeggio, fill it in with the scale, fill it in with something. Just make sure that you land on each E, right? So. So I filled it in with the full arpeggio. This time I'm only going to fill it in with the root and the fifth, so the E and the B. Then I'm going to take away the fifth, so only the E's. Now just the bottom and the top. Right? So those are ways of practicing that big, huge interval without it seeming scary. And if you do those steps first, it'll make it easier and less of like, oh no, I have to go from really low to really high. Oftentimes, it's not really, it's just our air, and it's more of what we do in our brain instead of what actually has to happen. I have given you a fingering on the fingering chart. This is the full E fingering. It uses half hold 2-3 and 2-3 on your right hand, and both your A flat key and your left E flat key. So both of those has to be pressed. You have to really kind of pancake them down, taking them down, and your octave key, right? That's the full E fingering. There are other E fingerings that are kind of short and whatnot, but this is going to be the most in tune for what we're doing for this octave jump. Okay, moving on. Measure 14, E minor arpeggio. So if you practice your E minor arpeggio in your warm-up, you've got it made. Measure 15, also same thing, use the breath mark as your spot to kind of lift and separate. But make sure that we stay forte all the way to that low E in measure 16. We don't want this to happen. And then the E doesn't come out, right? So keep your air moving all the way to measure 16. Okay, measure 16. Starting piano, but with supported air, with nice, big, full breath. You have time to take a really good breath right before you start measure 16. Also, you need to make sure you keep that tongue high, he, because we're playing high B again. So when you take a breath, you should not let it come in. So oftentimes you get, and it's really collapsed and closed and tight. If you let it stay open and full, it's going to make it sound more beautiful. Okay, so measure 17. Big leaps between lots of notes. I have isolated the lower notes. If you practice just playing those stepwise with just one line of air, so I played just the circled notes of measure 17. I didn't repeat the B. There's no reason to repeat the B. It's a B, right? So that's what you want to get your embouchure set for, are the lower notes. The higher notes, we're just kind of let them float and come out as we go. But if you keep that lower note line going, then it'll be there. And then just add them in slowly. Practice one at a time, one lead. Small little chunks. These are big leaps, so you want to practice them slowly and with lots of air, continuous air. Keep it going. Okay, measure 17. I have given you a fingering for high D sharp, high E flat, right? Okay, so that's your only one here. That's the only fingering for high E flat is this pinky over here, your D, low D key. If you ever play low D, right? Every oboe has a low D key. Right, so low, then it goes to a different E fingering, which is on the right side. But it's also your A flat key and your E flat key. So, same thing as over here, only we can use it on this side. So it's called the right hand full E fingering. Okay, and I would practice doing this on long tones, just going from high D sharp to high E. And then go to your high A sharp. Until you can get it faster. Okay? All right, moving quickly on to the next thing. If you can see, I have isolated in measures 18 and 19. If you group those two notes together first while you're practicing, let's see, went to sleep. Right? So group those together first, then group the next four, or group them in fours. Okay, and then the whole line with a big slur. Okay, so in measure 19, you see there's a crescendo at the very end. We want to really kind of make a little rallentando there and crescendo into measure 20. And we're back to our double dotted note, so be careful of the rhythm there, but use the breath to your advantage. And it's just a trill to F. Start on E and trill to F sharp. Actually, I'm sorry, F sharp, because that's in the key signature. And then the little 30-second notes at the end pull you into the next measure. And the same thing. Okay, now back to the same interval we talked about earlier, that F sharp to high B. So watch your intonation there. Now, the last couple measures, you want to make sure you have a full breath before you start that in measure 24. And use that to your advantage. Take a nice full breath. Make sure that your triplets are really even and that your last note is held for the full 3 beats, right? It's like, that's a long time on high E, but it's really got to be 3 beats, yeah? Excellent. Okay, moving on to the next one. Sorry to move so quickly, but it's already halfway over. So the next etude is number 20. Also in a minor key. This one is in G minor. So if we, again, practice our G minor scale in all 3 forms, natural, melodic, and harmonic, and then you practice your arpeggios. Make sure that when you practice this, that you don't just go from your low G to your G right above the staff, that you extend and go up to your high D. That we're not just going. Why? Because in this etude, there's high place. So if you're practicing them in your warm-up, it's going to make it easier in the Etude. Okay. Right, let's play it. Oops. Good idea. There we go. Okay, so this one obviously starts out on the 5th of the scale. It starts out on the D, so G, B flat, D. That's the 5th of the minor. Make sure that you take a nice big full breath. On the second beat, the trill starts on the G, so it doesn't start from an A. It starts on the G, and you only need to do one little thing. Right? Normally we think of trills as, right? But because this etude is so fast and so quick, one little bidoo will do. Yeah? So practice that isolated. And then add your F sharp. And give it a little accent. Right? Okay? Good. Now, measure 2, this is just the G minor scale going up. So, G minor scale. Starts on G on the and of 1. So, it goes up, right? Now, we have a repeat, measure 3 of measure 1. Same thing with your trill. Give it that little accent. Now, measure 4 seems like it's going to be the same thing, but then it changes to... Sorry, I've lost my place. We're in measure 4. It changes to the melodic minor, right? Because it changes to E natural. So make sure that we bring that out and put a little crescendo there. Because it's going into, this is happy now, instead of the sad that we had before, right? Now, in measure 5, we want to group that arpeggio together. So the F sharp belongs to the scale before, right? And I group those together in measure 6 and 7. The slur 2, then tongue 2, but it crosses over the bar line, right? So. And you want to kind of just float your high D, right? It shouldn't be forced or squeezed or anything, just let it, yeah? And if you see on the 3rd sheet that I gave you are all sorts of fingerings for high D. Now, every oboe is different, so if you look at this, you can figure out by doing this process that I've said at the bottom, how to figure out which high D fingering is the best for you, right? Every oboe is different. For me, I use the high D full option 1, okay? So that's just how you can figure out for intonation reasons. Now, going on, measure 9, 10, 11, same as the opening. So you've already got pretty much half of the etude learned. If you learn the first 4 measures, you've got half the etude learned. Then in measure 12, we have that E natural again. But look, in measure 13, it doesn't go to F sharp. It goes to F natural, right? It goes to F natural. So you want to use your left F here. If you don't have a left F, you can use forked. Now, if you use forked, you don't have to put your E flat pinky down. It might have been what you were taught a long time ago to use forked up and put your pinky down. But it's not necessary, and it could trip things up. But if you're used to it, use it. If you're not, don't. Okay, so. And you want to make that nice little crescendo and just try to change colors here because we're going in a different direction, right? Now here we think we're going into that happy mode again, right? Measure 16 because we have the F sharp. But no, we get to measure 19 and we have this A flat, right? It's kind of a trick. Right, and if you see, I have that this staccato note is connected to the next group, to the next group, to the next group. And this helps you move along in the etude and not get bogged down, right? So. Okay, now, in measure 21, I really suggest that you pause and take a breath. If you notice, so far, the only other place to take a breath was in measure 8. So, unless you have, lungs of steel, I don't know what you have, that you can make it from measure 9 to measure 36 without taking a breath, wow, I want to come hear you play. But it's just probably not going to happen. And it's okay to take a breath. It's okay to take a pause. You don't have to go, right? Because that's just way too quick. You have to be able to make it all the way another 16 measures to the end. So just take a breath. Right? Okay? Okay, so moving on, same as the beginning again, same as the beginning, measure 25, 26. We get a little bit different. Make sure that you do finger exercises here really slow because we could get what I call flip-flops, extra notes in between, right? Right? And then measure 27, that A belongs to measure 26. It doesn't belong in measure 27. It should be in measure 26, but there was no space. So we put it in measure 27, right? So a lot of this is just grouping the notes so that it makes the etude flow and makes the etude move forward. Okay? Going on. Same thing, we get the scale again, measure 31, we're using our F sharp there. Then measure 32, we start on the 5th, up, then we go to the 3rd, and then we're back to the root. Right, and use the same kind of float technique that we used in measure 8 with the G octaves. Okay? I think that's all the time that I have, unfortunately. But if you would like to come ask me questions, I would love to answer them. Thank you.